E sábado, 6h04 da noite. Se você chegou aqui através de João Carvalho, obrigado, João Carvalho, por incentivar a galera a escrever. A minha intenção com aquele superchat era mostrar as conexões que eu vejo entre o One Piece e comunismo. Tá? É uma teoria minha própria, né, de One Piece. E fazer aqui, agora eu tenho 21 pessoas para entreter, não só 5. No espírito do internacionalismo, gostaria de apresentar Jimmy the Giant. Esse cara é um britânico, né? Não sei se ele se considera democrata ou se ele se considera socialista, ou se ele se considera comunista, mas ele tem uns vídeos bem interessantes, né? E aí, esse vídeo
Este
aqui,
vídeo é oferecido.
coloquei para as legendas automáticas do YouTube e vamos nós.
A vocês pelo
Vou pular
Squarespace.
essa aqui,
Sim, 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 meus irmãos, minhas amigas.
a voz dele. A tradução tá muito estranha, mas beleza.
Vou fazer outra dessas pequenas conversas com as câmeras. Vocês devem ter notado, sabe, através de alguns dos meus vídeos, que entrei oficialmente para a Brigada UOC. É uma pena.
É.
Eu realmente não queria, mas vou contar como chegamos aqui. Minha trajetória política tem sido bem insana. Em um ponto, eu estava em
Ah,
um vídeo de Nico.
e aqui, como eu escapei, a pipeline é linha de alimentação, né? É, encanamento. Como é que ele escapou da extrema-direita, da direita alternativa? Alto de alternative, de alternativa, right de direita.
Com uma lama apoiando Trump. Sou eu. Admito.
Tá
Menino
aqui.
borrado. Repórteres Trump do Reino Unido. Estou aqui, olhem para o meu chapéu. Eu amo Donald Trump. Então, hoje vamos falar sobre como conseguir escapar do oleoduto da direita alternativa.
Vá para o inferno, moralistas. Islã.
São 200 mil habitantes.
E quantos? 45.
Nunca haverá paz nesta terra enquanto tivermos este livro. É um livro violento e amaldiçoado. Ataques a mesquitas. Outras comunidades minoritárias foram destacadas. Queria violência junto com retórica racista. Quando eu era um jovem gangster, um YG, eu era meio bru, certo? Um bruzinho, com cerca de 13 anos. E fomos convidados para a escola. Era obrigatório. Não fomos convidados. E tivemos que fazer um discurso. Então, sabe, meu amigo vai lá e faz a história do clube de futebol Chelsea. Uma garota vai lá e faz sobre equitação. Eu vou com meu pequeno pendrive. Coloco. 11 de setembro. Então, basicamente, prossigo
Caralho.
radicalizando uma sala de aula de jovens impressionáveis de 13 anos sobre o motivo pelo qual o governo americano fez o 11 de setembro.
Quem você acredita que estava por trás do 11 de setembro?
Elementos criminosos do complexo militar industrial, os mesmos que encenaram o Golfo de Tonkin, os mesmos que encenaram a operação de tiroteios em massa da Operação Gladio. Eu
Cara,
estava nesse tipo de bolha inicial de teoria da conspiração.
afinal, tem uma teoria da conspiração de que imagens térmicas, né, do 11 de setembro mostrava que existia metal a mais de 3.000 graus, que é uma coisa que você consegue fazer com termite, né? Inclusive em Breaking Bad, o White e o Pink, os dois, eles usam do termite para poder derreter uma maçaneta. É a primeira vez que eles roubam metanfetamina de um armazém, né, para poder fazer. Não, roubam uma matéria-prima da metanfetamina para fazer aquela metanfetamina super pura pra caramba. Essa teoria da conspiração acredita que foi utilizado de termite para poder derreter uma, uma parte razoável das bases das duas torres. E sem isso, em tese, aquelas torres teriam sobrevivido sim aos aviões.
Mas o que quero dizer é que foi interessante, certo? Porque naquela época ser um teóricos da conspiração não era esquerda ou direita, era simplesmente anti-establishment. E então, enquanto eu ouvia Alex Jones, também ouvia os jovens turcos e ouvia sobre o Occupy Wall Street. Então, quando eu era jovem, eu era apenas um hipster meio que opositor. Não sou
É,
comunista, Mas definitivamente não sou capitalista e definitivamente sou de esquerda e votei para permanecer no referendo da União Europeia. E assim o tempo foi passando, eu cresci e lembro que consegui, sabe, alguns empregos trabalhando em lojas como Sainsbury's ou B&Q e isso estava alimentando ainda mais meus sentimentos anticapitalistas. Mas lembro que consegui um emprego e conheci um observador e ele era um direitista de verdade. Oh, capitalismo é bom porque o capitalismo é liberdade. O socialismo é ruim porque o socialismo é tirania. Era como uma direita em carne e osso. Eu nunca tinha visto uma antes. Eu pensava, que é essa? O capitalismo é bom, o estado de bem-estar social é ruim, o NHS é ruim. Mas veja, embora eu
NHS é o National Healthcare System da Inglaterra. Inclusive, o Sistema Nacional de Saúde da Inglaterra foi baseado no SUS. Tá? Eu acho que foi nos anos 90 que a Inglaterra veio visitar a gente para ver como é que funcionava e fazer lá.
discordar
E estão tentando derrubar o NHS na Inglaterra já faz tempo, eu acho. Uns 10 anos, uma coisa assim.
profundamente de todas as suas visões no começo, você tem que lembrar do Jimmy, um garoto de 13 anos que era contraditório. Ele ainda está lá em algum lugar, e o que ele ouve são visões contrárias. Você diz, antissistema, não convencional. O pequeno e moderno Jimmy engoliu esse tipo de retórica de direita porque eu percebi que era diferente de todos os outros e isso me tornaria interessante se eu acreditasse em todas essas coisas, certo? E quando eu digo de direita, não é, você sabe, não gostamos de estrangeiros. É coisas assim. As pessoas
Tá tendo um movimento nacional pra caralho na Inglaterra, na Europa de forma geral, né? E ressurgimento do nazismo. Também não é ressurgimento, porque ele não chegou a desaparecer. Eles só estão saindo da toca agora. Né?
Pessoas que recebem assistência social perdem sua independência humana e seu sentimento de dignidade.
Filho da puta.
Elas se tornam sujeitas aos ditames e caprichos de seu supervisor de assistência social, que pode dizer a elas se podem viver aqui ou ali, se podem instalar um telefone, o que podem fazer com suas vidas. Elas são tratadas como crianças. Então agora estou às portas do canal da direita alternativa, certo? Pego meu chapéu com a luz acesa, acendo a lanterna, pego minha picareta e entro. A primeira parada é Jordan Peterson. E se eu tivesse dito a você, por favor, prefiro me chamar de ela, como você responderia a isso em um nível pessoal?
Mas não tá traduzindo, não.
Como eu responderia a isso? Porque tive várias conversas com pessoas transgênero, é que uso qualquer pronome que pareça combinar com a persona que elas estão projetando publicamente.
Eu acho que a tradução tá dando cagada.
Por favor, prefiro me chamar de ela. Como você responderia combinar com a persona que elas estão projetando publicamente?
Vamos ver o que dá. Esse plano original não tá rolando, não.
Como posso descrever o fato de que alguém que já foi mulher e ainda teve os seios que elas estão projetando publicamente?
Pô, uma pena. Deixa eu voltar, eu vou colocar no. Botar pro inglês. Eu vou colocar legenda. Que é só em inglês também. Pô. E realmente não. Automática para português. Vamos colocar catalão. Pordo. Que é essa? PP português. Ok.
Their welfare supervisor who can tell them whether they can live here or there, whether they may put in a telephone, what they may do with their lives. They're treated like
So
children.
now I'm at the doors of the alt-right pipeline, right? I pick up my hat with the light, turn the torch on, grab my pickaxe, and I head in. And the first stop is Jordan Peterson.
And then if I'd said to you, please, I'd rather go by she, how would you respond to that on a personal level? How would
The way I have responded to that, because I've had a number of conversations with transgendered individuals, is that I use whatever pronoun seems to go along with the persona that they're projecting publicly.
How can I describe the fact that someone who was once a woman, and really still is, had her breasts cut off because she, he, they, their, them had fallen prey to a viciously harmful fad?
So bear in mind, I didn't go to university. I went and just tried to make little businesses. I did a parkour brand, I ran a vegan food store, I did lots of little things. And very importantly, I was not academic. Jordan Peterson, to young Jimmy, sounded like how I imagine smart people sound.
So even if you do happen to be that avatar of moral purity,
Peraí. Oi, pai. Ah. Eu vi. Aham. Tchau.
that you claim implicitly, the probability that you'd get to act out your goodness in relationship to those possessed by your ideology is zero.
He would use big words, he would do this with his hands, he would think and contemplate. Like, he was the sort of caricature of a smart person. And it was very interesting because all of his views tended to be quite contrarian to sort of mainstream views. And he would, again, like my friend, he would talk about the benefits of capitalism. He would talk about natural hierarchies and that it wasn't capitalism.
Tô achando que tá passando muito rápido. Será que vai ficar muito... Vamos ver como é que fica com 09.
Fault for hierarchies, but hierarchies are natural. And so it's very interesting because if you think about what Jordan Peterson is and what he thinks and his words now, back in 2016 it was very different, right?
As a matter of respect, in fact, would you refer to a trans person who asks you to use they them pronouns, a pronoun which has a several hundred-year historical
That's not what we're talking about.
He rises to fame on what he is portraying as a free speech battle. The Canadian government are trying to make
Sempre isso, liberdade de expressão.
it so that if you say the wrong pronouns to a transgender person, you will go to jail. And Jordan Peterson never says something like, I don't believe in trans people. You
A legenda foi muito rápida.
will go to... If you say the wrong pronouns to a transgender
É uma lei no Canadá que se você falar os pronomes incorretos, você vai para a cadeia.
person, you will go to jail. And Jordan Peterson never says something like, I don't believe in trans people, and so I don't believe I should say their pronouns. He's not saying that people who do transgender surgeries are butchers. He is saying that by law, I shouldn't be forced to say anything.
Difference between saying that there's something you can't say and saying that there are things that you have to say. And I regard these made-up pronouns, all of them, as the neologisms of radical
imbecil.
PC authoritarians.
As I grew up, I kind of realised he misrepresented this bill and he was blowing things out of proportion. But if we just take it on face value and believe what he was saying, then yeah, it seemed illogical to oppose what he was saying. And so whilst I'm going through Jordan Peterson's books, his podcasts, his speeches, etc., I'm getting this feeling that there's this sort of crazy, indoctrinated Marxist left who are trying to suppress your freedom and usher in communism. And so all this is happening all the way in Canada where no one gives a fuck about. But what about here in Britain, right? In Britain, we have a sort of similar scenario. And it involves a man, a very controversial man, by the name of Tommy Robinson. Before we go any further, I want to give a massive shout out to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is undoubtedly the best, I'm not kidding, the best platform when it comes to making % off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Use the code Jimmy the Giant. Anyway, back to the video.
This the Quran around in your hand
is
in
the
that
reason.
disgraceful manner.
This book is
outrageous.
This book is the reason we're in such a mess.
Boys, I'm not proud of this, but I'm just being an honest person. I'm trying to explain where I was at, how I got to where I was, and how I am where I am now. And so I come across Tommy Robinson in this period of time where he goes to jail for, as he's presenting it to the audience online, trying to report on Muslim grooming gangs. He goes to jail. And I see this as a suppression of journalism, a suppression of free speech by a tyrannical government.
Isso que ele falou sobre o cara falar que existem grupos islâmicos fazendo tráfico sexual de crianças, faz alguns tantos meses, né? Saiu isso, mas aparentemente a Damares estaria ligada a tráfico sexual de crianças. Mas quem é que fala? O que a Damares fala sobre o tráfico sexual de crianças? E os esquerdistas que estão querendo fazer com as nossas crianças, estão querendo ensinar eles a ter prazer sexual com esse ensino sexual, que não sei o que não... Ah! É... Então é sempre inverso. Olha.
You know, and I ignored the fact that it was contempt to court, and he knew exactly it was contempt to court, and he did it deliberately to provoke this reaction. But the way it was being presented was very clever. Again, it was all about free speech. It wasn't about the underlying issue of Islam, etc., but it was just about free speech. And so when you're already primed to be sort of libertarian, pro-free speech, and you're perceiving these attacks on free speech, you start to wonder, why are they attacking these people for their speech? And it unfortunately has this effect of making you think that the person is a truth teller and the government are trying to suppress them. And it reinforces your belief in what they're saying must have some truth to it if they want to hide it so bad. And these people, these what I would now consider grifters, they know that. They know that that's the response and the feeling it's going to create in people. They want to be martyrs because then people will follow them even more ardently.
Então, pô, eu não sei até hoje se a facada do Bolsonaro é verdadeira ou não, né? Mas, pô, a facada deve ter sido assim, o golpe final para ele conseguir se eleger em 2018, né? E o Trump também recebendo um tiro na orelha, depois um outro tiro. E esse último tiroteio que teve na Casa Branca, agora foi o quê? Faz umas 2 semanas. Isso eu acho que realmente foi um estadunidense putaço com a situação da vida dele e falou: quer saber, foda-se, eu vou lá. Porra, você tá vendendo o fuzil AR-15 M16 no Walmart, alguém em algum momento pode rolar esse tipo de coisa, né?
Free Tommy Robinson and free him now.
And so yeah, I go to like a rally, like a free speech rally when Tommy Robinson's about to go to jail, and I come across Nico, and I see Nico, and I've seen him online, and I saw how he was trying to present everyone that went to a Tommy Robinson rally as a racist. And I knew from my perspective, and knowing who I was, I knew I wasn't a racist. And so I go up to Nico and I tell the people around him that he's trolling you and he's trying to like make you look stupid online. And then Nico does misrepresent me in the video, and he says that I went up to the police and told them to get rid of Nico.
The police then came over and surprise, he started crying to them as well.
When in reality, I was actually saying to the police that Nico has his free speech, because, you know, I'm fucking obsessed with free speech in this period of time. I don't know why. I think it's the single most important thing on earth. But either way, like, as much as I disagree with myself for being at that rally and supporting Tommy Robinson in that time, I still stand by the fact that I don't think these people understood why people were presenting them as racist, right? And I just want to touch on that.
Tell me a Trump policy right now. I support... Fake. Waffle. You're waffling, man. Yeah, answer the question.
I support his trade policy.
How dare you fake this? How dare you?
You know, now, from, you know, the view I have now, I understand there are sort of two types of racism. There's like overt racism, which is like, you know, I fucking hate migrants when you send them back, they're the worst. And then you have this kind of more like subconscious racism, or like in effect racism. And what I mean by that is, like, I knew I wasn't racist because I grew up very multiculturally and I liked people of different races. I had lots of friendships with them and I got along with them very well. So I never in my heart felt anything bad towards people of different races. But what can happen from there is when you think you're like immune to racism, you sometimes are more susceptible to it in a way, but just a different type of racism. These grifters know they can't just say that, I don't know, black people are inferior genetically, although some of them have started doing that again. They've found sneakier ways of wrapping it, often by hiding behind culture. These pundits will lie and say stuff like 84% of grooming gangs are Asian Pakistani, which has been endlessly disproven. It is white people who make up the majority of grooming gangs. But all this misinformation can lead you to believe that their culture is inferior to ours, and therefore we can't mix. And with the Tommy Robinson thing, it's kind of the same when it comes to Islam, right? you didn't hate people for being like having brown skin. You were simply critiquing their ideology, their beliefs.
You wouldn't do that with
Sir William
Would you do that with the Bible? Show some respect.
Show some respect.
Show some respect.
Have you read this
for
book?
people?
Have you read this
There
book?
are over
There's
a billion people.
So, you know, I'm listening to the greatest hits, right? I'm listening to Ben Shapiro debate some 12-year-old feminist. I'm listening to Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh, I'm Joe Rogan till I fucking die. And I find myself accepting that I must be right-wing now. And, you know, little hipster Jimmy, that's cool because now I'm different to everyone. I'm the contrarian, right? I have all the different opinions. Oh no, the sky isn't blue. Actually, no, it's a shade of maroon. And like, when you're listening to all this stuff, you get this sort of impression of the left, like what you're perceiving the left to be like, basically the worst of the left.
You know you're a millennial when you question whether or not it's ethical to bring children into this world because of climate change. We don't really know whether or not the world's going to be habitable in 30 years.
And so you just get pushed further and further right from...
Para quem não sabe, as calotas polares derretendo, o que acontece? Elas sempre agiram como um espelhão. 2 espelhões gigantescos, né? E toda a energia solar bate ou no Polo Norte, no Polo Sul, 70% é para fora da atmosfera. Então, no que você diminui esses espelhões, né, diminui também a saída da energia solar que batia no Polo Norte e no Polo Sul. Então, as mudanças climáticas elas não são mais 2, mais 2, mais 2. Elas são 2 vezes 2 vezes 2. Né? Se o 2 mais 2 mais 2 te dá 6, o 2 vezes 2 vezes 2 te dá 8. Aí é aquele clássico, né? Quando você eleva coisas, o escalonamento é muito maior.
More of a reactionary position rather than some actual ideological and maybe academic understanding of economies and politics. It just sort of is a feeling. And it's so funny, like when Ben Shapiro and these sort of people get famous off of facts don't care about your feelings. But to be honest, like conservatives these days, it just seems to be mainly emotion. It's how they feel about topics. They hate when you bring up academic papers and actual facts, and they don't trust any of that.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
Quem é que tá comendo gato agora? Quem é que tá comendo burro? Argentina.
They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
I've seen people on television.
Let me just...
And either way, I find myself as a right-winger. I have not descended into overtly racist beliefs or overtly transphobic beliefs, misogynistic beliefs. I haven't gone that far, but I probably do house some sort of unconscious discriminatory beliefs in maybe trans people, perhaps even women to a degree. Again, often wrapping their push for equality and better rights as some kind of Marxist revolution. But I believe in the typical sort of right-wing viewpoint that the state should be smaller, that people are responsible for themselves, and probably that like poor people are just lazy and they need to fix their own shit, and that billionaires and corporations are really good and like, you know, sort of, unless they're the ones that, I don't know, Russell...
Isso é o Jimmy the Giant do passado. Você vê que é a mesma coisa na Inglaterra e aqui no Brasil também. Os direitistas também vão ser assim, nos Estados Unidos também são assim. Sempre essa coisa do Estado menor, que é você contra o mundo, né? Que pobre é preguiçoso. Agora, pessoal, tem um maluco aqui de direita e virou e falou assim, não, porque se a gente acabar com a 6x1 e todo mundo trabalhar 5x2, esse cara vai ter mais tempo para cachaça, voltar para casa e bater na família. E, por consequência, encerrar 6x1 vai aumentar a violência doméstica. Olha, tem a 4-Day Weeks Global, que é uma organização que testa a escala 4x3 no mundo inteiro. E eu acho que eu nunca vi uma taxa menor de 75% de empresas que continuaram, né? Tem algumas, tipo 10% para menos, que acabam tendo perda no testam a jornada 4x3. Só que a grande maioria das organizações que testam 4x3 mantém 4x3.
Brand says is bad, and then all of a sudden they're bad because they're tied to, I don't know, George Soros. George Soros business, bad. Bill Gates business, bad. But Elon Musk buying Twitter, good. Very good. Anyway, I'm deep in the pipeline, right? I'm deep. COVID happens. Obviously, I don't get vaxxed. I don't wear the mask. I'm sorry if I killed anyone.
Porra, então o Jimmy é até recente a transformação dele, né? De sair da direita e passar para a esquerda.
And, you know, again, I regret that position now. I literally didn't want to get vaxxed, not because I thought it had 5G in it or something, but just because I was so sort of libertarian right-wing that I didn't like the fact the government were telling me to do it. And, like, I don't know, I'm here today, I'm vaccinated, and the woke police haven't come to my door yet, so probably I was overreacting.
Vaccine passports. While we've been looking in other directions, they are being slowly yet deliberately introduced. Are they the linchpin in a global surveillance network?
So you might be wondering, like, what was the moment? Like, when did it all change? When did the dam break? And there was a moment, right? And I can kind of point to it specifically. And it was through making my videos. Now, as you know, you guys watching, you're probably really into all the social political stuff I do. But originally, I was a parkour YouTuber. And then I become like an extreme sports YouTuber. And when I got to the end of this period, in 2022, I wanted to diversify my content, right? And I remember genuinely, I thought I was probably even going to make like those sort of right-wing documentary series, like things like Jen or like some of Moon's stuff, you know, that kind of thing. I thought I'd end up in that ilk. But you see, because I was a smart bruh and I could read the room, I knew that I could make a video why Jordan Peterson's the best man alive. I knew I had to take my time to kind of meander. So I made a video on a very specific topic about chavs. Clothing brands that you didn't like were called chav. Rough neighbourhoods were considered chav infested. But what exactly is a chav? And most importantly, where did they all go? And so I made this video. It's really interesting if you rewatch it, because my biases and all of my thinking going into this video is that chavs are bad because they were dickheads and they chose to be bad. But whilst making the video and wanting to address the question, like, where did chavs go? Why did they disappear? I stumbled across a geezer called Owen Jones. What chavs argued back then was against this idea that...
Ih, não tá fazendo a legenda.
The chavs go, why did they disappear? I stumbled across a geezer.
To the Chavs. O que aconteceu com os Chavs, Owen Jones, em uma conversa com Ash Sarkar.
Called Owen Jones.
Chavs, a demonização da classe trabalhadora.
What chavs argued back then was against this idea that
O que os Chavs argumentavam no passado era contra essa ideia da velha classe média. Então era esse outro grupo de como é que é? Então era esse grupo de trabalhadores malucos. Reckless é meio que significa sem limite.
I see Owen Jones and all of my, but you see it in the video. I'm like, look guys, I'm about to quote Owen Jones. I don't agree with him, but what he says about chavs is really interesting. You should probably listen to it. Truly a war in the public sphere. The author and journalist Owen Jones, who I have to admit I don't really agree with him on a lot, he wrote an entire book called Chavs. And so I read it and I'm like, fuck, maybe chavs were like a product of their environment and their economic status. Bear in mind, this is the opposite. This is the antithesis of my view, is that I would have believed as a right-winger that cultures are just like people who make decisions to behave in the way they want to. So these are bad people who are choosing to be bad. So after this video, I go down different rabbit holes. I'm making different subcultures. I do skinheads and I do football hooligans, which are both in a very interesting period of time, which is the Thatcher era. And the more I research into Thatcher and see how she completely flipped this country on its head, she completely radicalized Britain into being extreme neoliberal capitalists. And it's kind of become just assumed that that's how the world has always worked. That's how we are. But then I discovered that at some point in society, we weren't fucking insane capitalists that we are right now. I've discovered this because there was a period of time called the post-war consensus, which I talk about fucking endlessly on this channel. But in that period of time, we followed a style of economics that was called Keynesianism, which meant that the government's job was to make sure everyone was employed and to tax the wealthy at higher rates, use that money to build infrastructure that benefited the people. And then bear in mind,
Depois da Segunda Guerra Mundial, o fluxo de dinheiro, por causa da reconstrução da Europa reconstrução da Europa e também das vendas que os Estados Unidos fez de munição, de armas, equipamento, tudo isso para a Segunda Guerra Mundial, o fluxo de dinheiro vindo para os Estados Unidos era tão grande que a taxa ia até 94% para os mais ricos, tá? Nos anos 50. Por causa disso que os anos 50 é a Golden Era, né? A era de ouro dos Estados Unidos. E aí o que acontece? Os Estados Unidos usou isso para poder fazer infraestruturas. Foi o John F. Kennedy, não sei até hoje o que é o John F. Tá? Mas aí foi interferência do Estado pra caralho em cima para poder recuperar os Estados Unidos, que ainda estava meio fudido da Grande Depressão de 1929. Funcionou. Aí a coisa começa a desandar de novo ali nos anos 80 por causa do Reagan.
you know, I'm listening to Donald Trump saying, make America great again, and everyone's harping on about how the
Inclusive, Make America Great Again é a frase que nasce com o Reagan, 80.
the world was better back in like the 60s and 50s. And then I find out the reason why it was better was because we had mass public investment. This investment led to the greatest economic boom in history, raised many of the working class into the middle class, which created a whole host of new industries, new products, basically, it was good shit. What we
As pessoas têm dinheiro, e quando elas têm dinheiro, elas conseguem consumir. Por consequência, o melhor capitalismo é o capitalismo mais socialista possível. Contradições do capitalismo.
did then was good. And you know, you got to bear in mind that I am being told the only answer to life's problems is dog eat dog, free market capitalism. Get the government out of everything. The government can do nothing right. Only the geniuses of commerce can do anything. Like our water supply that has no piss and poo in it. Or like our really quick and definitely on time and affordable train system. Or like our really affordable housing that people...
Essa legenda passou rápido pra caramba. É realmente rápido, definitivamente. Só não sei se deu pra vocês ler direito.
People definitely aren't speculating on and shrinking the middle class.
Private water companies are dumping huge amounts of raw sewage in Britain's rivers and off its coastlines. They're doing so to save money, to ensure returns for shareholders, and by extension, to guarantee massive salaries for bosses at the top.
And so yeah, time's going past, man, and I'm learning this shit, and I'm like, fuck, and I'm starting to realise, like, I don't know if I believe all the things that I believe about right-wing politics, but I hadn't accepted it, right? I was becoming more and more distrustful. Things like this, right? 1 month, I went on holiday to Thailand. I walk in a coffee shop, and I see the most beautiful woman on earth, who is now my wife, and she is Ukrainian. I go to Ukraine. Literally, during the war, I've been to Ukraine many times, and I've experienced air raids. I've heard bombs go off.
There we go. More attacks. Putin must be having a slow day.
Quando aparece esse colchete aí com underline, é porque ele tá falando algum xingamento.
All the while, I look on my phone at all the right-wingers talking about Ukraine, and they believe that Zelensky is like, I don't know, a blue-haired feminist or something.
I will stress this again. One of the greatest enemies of our nation right now is Ukraine.
And they're trying to say that it's actually NATO, and NATO are the bad guys, and America's bad, even though we're pro-America, America is bad. And, you know, I'm learning more about the Ukrainian conflict and all the history of how it came to be and why we defend them and why we can't allow Russia to just go and take over sovereign nations. And so you learn more and more about this. But then there was two people I come across that really like cemented the change, right? So I'm becoming distrustful of the right. I'm starting to see, like, you know, their takes on Ukraine as being ridiculous. And then I come across a streamer.
Esse é masculinista.
So right now we're deep in the sort of Andrew Tate era. Andrew Tate has blown up, and at first it was kind of, you know, it was kind of fun. It was like, especially if you're sort of a young right-wing libertarian type, you need to get strong to look after yourself, look after women, looking after the people you love. Like, that sort of stuff was kind of nice. I started going to the gym, I started doing all that stuff. I was always sort of into the self-help stuff, so all that shit sounded good. And then he started to talk about women.
To some degree, as a man, you have to instill drama in the relationship, because if you don't, she's going to get bored.
No, that's very true, man.
And she's either going to leave or she will instill the drama, which gives her control.
Then you're seeing all these Fresh and Fit podcasts and Sneeko and all this crazy shit, and you're seeing like people making their entire livings complaining about women, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And there was one bro who would go on these shows, and his name was Destiny.
Women fare a lot better post-divorce than men do, bro. And the reason why is because they get the resource, they get the money, they get the children, they get put in a better situation financially.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
Dude, they get the house. Moms don't live good on child support. That's not true. Have you ever seen a bitch on child support? She's not living the greatest fucking life.
Women fare worse than men in almost every degree after divorces. So the idea of pretending...
What are you talking about?
They make more money. They have better dating strategies afterwards. Men just do better than women in almost every single metric post-divorce.
What? Bro?
Destiny was really interesting because he was a lefty, and he was proud to be a lefty. He didn't try and hide. He didn't say he was like a centrist. He was like, no, I'm on the left. But he didn't play into like the left-wing woke crazy stereotype. He was just a normal dude who presented left-wing ideas but was really good at debating. Now remember, debating the left up until this point was Ben Shapiro debating a 4-year-old. But now you're seeing someone who's actually quite well versed in the beliefs of the right wing, debating them and winning a lot. So I get into Destiny, right? And I even was going to make a video on Destiny. I might do it again one day. And I had a conversation with him on a stream, but I was so right wing at the time, I didn't know how to make the video because I kind of had this mental block between really asking him sort of questions. But then the final nail in the coffin for me, at the point where I realized I was no longer right wing, was when I came across Gary's economics.
You need to have structures in.
Gary, ele é britânico também, ele também é cara interessante, mas ele me lembra, ele diz que não é de esquerda.
Place in your economy that prevent the rich from taking all of the wealth. If you don't have that, history teaches us the rich get all of the wealth. And once the rich have all of the wealth, ordinary people end up with very poor living conditions. You know, if you go to countries that are very unequal, India, South Africa, you know, almost anywhere in Latin America, very unequal societies lead to very poor living standards.
Gary is like a working class geezer, and he became super wealthy as a trader, and his whole thesis was that income inequality is gonna get worse, and he betted on that. He made money predicting that, and it came to fruition. Income inequality has got much worse. And what's interesting, right, is he talks about income inequality and why it was bad and why it's bad for house prices and cost of living, etc. But the thing is, and I don't know if he doesn't really talk about this too much, but it unlocked this vault in the back of my brain.
Yeah.
It was this old memory of a clip that Jordan Peterson had put out. And it was him talking about...
Aqui atrás, Jordan Peterson, pobreza causa crime? Errado. Yes.
The correlation between income inequality and crime.
You know, you always hear this idea that poverty causes crime. That's a classic left-wing idea, but it's wrong. what causes crime, especially aggressive crime, is relative poverty. Poverty is when you don't have enough to eat. Relative poverty is when the guy next door has a much better car than you.
The right wing really love to argue about culture. They always say that, like, it's people's, the problems in society comes from people's ideas and beliefs and their values, which is super convenient, right? Because when anything goes bad, you can just say that, oh, well, it's because people are lazy or they're radical Marxist or all the while, there's no solution to that, right? What can you do? You can't change people's minds, so it's just like, oh, well, I guess we just have to accept the status quo. But when you fundamentally challenge that view, the sort of outcomes come from culture and people's individual decisions, and you start to realize that outcomes, you know, like negative outcomes, crime, poverty, people having less families, having less kids, that maybe doesn't come from culture. Maybe the reason that men and women aren't having kids and
Não é todo crime que é gerado por pobreza. Por exemplo, políticos envolvidos em corrupção, bilionários fazendo sonegação de impostos. Só que o crime que o cidadão comum sofre, ele é gerado pela desigualdade social, entende? Então, pobreza acaba, sim, gerando crime. Então, sim, esse índice de Gini, ele não é lá tão interessante. Pelo menos pouco que eu sei do índice de Gini, né? Então eu posso estar errado. Mas é sempre a questão de que, pô, comunismo quer que todo mundo tenha água, comida e abrigo no mínimo e você vai receber um trabalho, né? Porra, essa pessoa, se ela tem acesso a tudo que ela precisa, ela só vai roubar ou porque ela é cleptomaníaca, ou então porque realmente ela tacou foda-se, mas a pessoa que tem comida e água em uma casa, o celular dela e o computador dela, sabe, não tem porquê. Não tem porquê roubar. Por consequência, o crime cai abaixo.
Get married isn't because they're no longer Christian and they don't believe in families and the nuclear family. Maybe it's because no one can fucking afford to have families. Maybe it's because most people in their 20s still haven't moved out of their parents' house. Maybe it's because they don't make enough money between two people to afford to have a child. There's all these things that are happening, and you realize that probably the economic system is causing this. And it isn't just that the testosterone levels in men have dropped because, I don't know, they've fucking touched receipt.
O Humberto Matos foi nesse Tubacash, né, debater com 13 capitalistas. Aí teve aquele maluco lá. Eu tenho testosterona, você não tem testosterona. O maluco lá que ficou gritando, bicho, essa coisa de testosterona. Pelo amor de Deus.
Or something. And so yeah, the sort of like the needle drop, is that the expression? The pin drop? It all sort of made sense. I realized that I actually don't think everything is culture, and I think mainly things come from economics. I think most culture comes from economics. And like, yeah, of course, attitudes, values, beliefs, they also have an impact, but I think you cannot understate economics. And so from there, as I've had my fucking left-wing epiphany, my left-wiffany, I start to really realize, like, kind of the woke stuff. Yeah, it's annoying. Do we need to argue about if there's an egg in a salad emoji? Is that really that important? And you start seeing, like, I don't know, Matt Walsh, where he's done this whole documentary, What is a Woman? And he's the expert in this. Going on Joe Rogan, being asked how many kids are on puberty blockers because this is real fucking moral panic.
How many people have had this done?
Depends on what. I don't think we have exact numbers, but it's, if we're talking about the drugs, it's, I mean, millions.
It's a very small number, if that's right.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis.
If your politics spends more time talking about, I don't know, what toilet a transgendered person is going to piss in, or the woke brigade, if it spends more time on that than the cost of living, the housing crisis, rising inequality, things that, you know, are actually important and actually affect your lives, if you're more focused on the former, then I hate to say it, but you've been bamboozled.
Google react to radical vegans screaming away by removing the egg from their salad emoji.
So what?
What about my rights as somebody who loves eggs
Yes.
to have the egg in the emoji?
It's an endless trope. These sort of moral panics, these clutching of pearls over social issues tend to seemingly always happen when there's economic problems. Like, I think it was in the 70s where they tried to ban Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, because it was satanic and demonic. It just so happened.
Isso aconteceu mesmo. Os caras tentaram falar, não, porque isso é do diabo. No prédio anterior que eu morava, tinha um garoto, né, que morava no apartamento do lado, e o pai dele eu acho que era um pastor, né? Aí era a época de Yu-Gi-Oh!, começo dos anos 2000. E o filho dele, eles deram, né, pro filho dele. Caramba. Meu vizinho, o pastor, deu pro filho dele um deck de Yu-Gi-Oh! Mas aí teve um outro pastor que falou que Yu-Gi-Oh! Era coisa do demônio. E o cara foi lá e pegou o deck que ele tinha comprado pro filho e botou fogo.
Happened that the 70s was like a massive economic crisis. And so, yeah, the more I made these videos, the more I started to see these patterns, right? These patterns between the 20s and the 30s, the rise of fascism in the West, and how that seemed to tie in with the Great Depression. And then you notice that in the 70s and the 80s, you see the rise of the National Front, the racists and all this sort of stuff. That just happened to be the same time as stagflation and the oil crisis. And then now, lo and behold, 2024, we're in big economic problems, and it just so happens that the far right is on the rise, and the Tommy Robinson Farage followers are now throwing bricks at mosques. It's a repeatable story, and like when I've made these videos, you start seeing these patterns and you start seeing how it plays out, and it always comes back to economics. And like, look, I have no hatred towards people who are on the right. I actually feel a lot of sympathy to most right-wingers, because being where they were, I understand that they've kind of just been manipulated, typically.
É o que a gente fala aqui também, que a grande maioria dos bolsonaristas, na verdade, foi alimentado com um bando de fake news, tá? E, pô, tem muita gente por aí que se diz direitista, que na verdade é de esquerda e não sabe, tá?
They've trusted people who present information that try and rile them up, that make a lot of money from doing so, and they distract them from real issues. And the thing is, they're feeling the real issues. The real issues are affecting them, and they're trying to work out why. What is it? And the right will always try and find scapegoats to point at. It always does it. And like, as I've learned more, as I've read the book from George Monbiot, The Hidden Ideology.
A Doutrina Invisível, a história secreta do neoliberalismo e como ela veio controlar sua vida.
Neoliberalism. Yanis, I can never say his name.
Tecnofeudalismo. O Yanis Varoufakis, esse imbecil. Quem falou sobre o tecnofeudalismo foi a tecnologia classe. Pelo Teclas que eu descobri que existe tecnofeudalismo. Depois assisti o vídeo, o Felipe Boni também fez um vídeo sobre tecnofeudalismo, então que ele cita, né?
Chorus or whatever, his book Techno-Feudalism, I kind of realized like the argument should be about economics. The more I learn about the left and right economic theories, the more evidence that I can see that left-wing economics tends to result in better growth and prosperity for all people. Our system currently is great for the 1%. It's great for the ultra-wealthy because it monopolizes money into few hands. When you don't have rules to regulate certain businesses, when you tax people less and less, it becomes this like race to the bottom. And there's a funny reason as to why I believe in these kind of left-wing values, and it ties back to my original right-wing ideology, is because of meritocracy. The right always claim to believe in meritocracy, that we should, as a society, reward people who are good at things, right? And I genuinely believe that. However, I don't believe meritocracy exists when some people can inherit the best education, eat the best foods, have time to do sports, be healthy, have time to learn the oboe and the trombone whilst doing the Free Peaks challenge. That person has such an incredible advantage over the person at the bottom of the hierarchy. The person who grew up in poverty, whose dad's in jail, who whose mum has to work 3 jobs, that person who then has to leave home at 16 to pay rent and they can't afford to save a single penny. And the fact that this group of people that are living like this is growing.
Riqueza no Reino Unido, bilionários versus crianças na pobreza, 2010 versus agora. Deixa eu ver, ele não explica, né, o que é amarelo, o que é o vermelho. Número de crianças na pobreza, depois os custos da casa, e aqui riqueza dos bilionários do Reino Unido. Quality Trust, tá, 2010, 2012, Então ele tá falando. Ah, tá. O amarelo são os bilionários. Crianças em empresa. Os bilionários estavam aqui embaixo em 2010. Eles estão crescendo. Então, se as crianças que estão na pobreza. Tinha menos crianças na pobreza. Não, mais. Aí até aqui deu uma queda. Então aqui tinha menos crianças na pobreza. Chega um momento que, conforme mais bilionários existem, mais crianças na pobreza existem também. E eles mudarem a política daqui para frente, né, de 2024 para frente, a tendência é continuar.
Poverty is growing. I think it's utterly insane to pretend that there is a meritocracy. But the right wing, through a very concerted effort, has brainwashed most of society to believe that this is inevitable. We can't fix this. There's nothing we can do about this. But we know we can. We have in the past. Countries do right now. And so that is where I land. If it means that I now have to wear a badge to show I'm part of the woke brigade, so be it. I've accepted that through actually delving into this stuff, looking into social economic problems, reading papers from academics, not listening to Jordan Peterson tell me that the academia world is overrun by Marxists. I've learned some stuff and I've challenged my way of viewing the world and had to challenge my ego at the same time. So I want to know you guys' evolution. Like, have you always believed in what you believe? Has it ever changed? What changed it? So drop that in the comments below. Join the Discord. I'll catch you in the next one.
Então o Jimmy the Giant, ele é
Peace.
Cara maneiro de assistir para ter uma perspectiva do Reino Unido. Tá? Tem vídeo aqui que eu não terminei, tem vídeo que eu terminei. Aqui, 5 dias atrás, né, eu falei que eles estão atacando o sistema de saúde da Inglaterra. Aqui ele fala sobre o que aconteceu com as cidades britânicas, que aparentemente tem muita cidade britânica ficando cada vez mais fodida, e alguns lugares ainda sobrevivem. A crise do garoto branco, o YouTube tem um problema fascista, né? Esse aqui eu não assisti ainda, ele entrevistando a mulher dele. Pode ser meu sonho, e depois eu fui embora. Drew Taylor, episódio 6, né? Eu fui radicalizado de novo? Então ele é um cara interessante. Ele já teve lá na extrema direita, mas conforme foi aprendendo mais, ele acabou virando não comunista, mas de esquerda. Ele também fala sobre o Lux Maxim, que é parte da machosfera. Né? E é isso. Espero que vocês tenham gostado.